Welcome back to the Board Game Sherpa. This is part 2 of an interview with Jack Berkenstock of the Bodhana Group. If you haven't seen the first part, go watch it. I'll put it up there. I think it's around there, or in the description. But it's about board game therapy. I hope you enjoyed. Take care.
Not a lot of folks ask us about board games, and it's really a huge part of what we do. So thank you. First,
I'm glad to help.
Yeah.
One of my hidden agenda, not so secret agenda, hidden agendas. Is I like bringing people into the hobby because I like to have a large population to pull from when I want game night, right? And this is the whole board game Sherpa is because a lot of people don't want to play board games for whatever reason. Many of the reasons they don't want to look stupid, they don't want to be the center of attention. God forbid they lose a game for someone.
Yeah.
So, what would your biggest suggestion to get people into? People who have some trepidation, not full social anxiety, but trepidation about getting into games for many of the reasons above. Getting them into a game night.
Well, I would say one thing that if a person's really trepidatious, and again, a lot of it depends on what the reason why they're trepidatious, right? So if a person is worried about not being, gamer savvy enough, right? Because one of the things I'm always accused of, and even my wife and I, she's like, put them down, because everywhere I get invited anywhere, I always bring no less than like 7 games in my trunk, just in case there's one other gamer. But a lot of times people are like, well, we don't know all that weird stuff. Okay. So what I usually do is I love 2-player games. Whether it's Patchwork, whether it's Mandala, whether it's Tides of War, Tides of Madness, like there are just so many great, Oshi is a great 2-player game. Onitama, I believe it's called. It's just so many great, like Boop is a fantastic 2-player abstract strategy game. It's frightfully easy to teach the basic rules, but it's an abstract strategy. It's adorable. And I personally think that 2-player games, for someone who's nervous about, I guess we can call it gamer performance anxiety, like worrying about looking dumb, about losing or whatever, I think 2 players are a great way to bring those folks in, because now there's less pressure because it's just you and one other person. So it gets that person used to playing with another person. It gets them used to possibly losing a game, or maybe losing multiple games if it's a quick game, right? So I think that also with the amount of 2-player games that are out there, you could teach people about card interaction. You could teach people dice games that are 2-player games. You could teach people abstract strategy with token and pawn movement. So it's kind of like a Karate Kid kind of thing, right? Where you're like, well, I'm teaching you this game, Tides of War. Well, now you're teaching me about cards and chaining. Right. Okay. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden it's sand the floor. So I think that's one way to do it. I also think with anxiety, like smaller game groups with, limited kind of game supply, because I also found a lot of paralysis analysis, not only when people are making their moves, but also just in the selection of a game. Because, like we said earlier, people always want to play their jam, the game that they're really, really good at, which I understand. But I'd say play to the person you're trying to bring into the hobby. You can show them all of the awesomeness later. Try to find, like I said earlier, try to find something attractive that's maybe an IP that they like, or not overly complicated mechanics. And I would even say if it's a game that takes you more than 15 minutes to introduce how to play, don't play that as a first-time game for someone.
Absolutely. It was funny. I had a friend over last weekend, and I brought him up to the loft, showed him the games, and I just saw the deer in the headlight looks. He's like, and I was like, okay, let's make this real easy.
Yep.
King of Tokyo.
Yep.
King of Tokyo's Marvel Splendor, Horrified, and he likes raccoons, so I have Raccoon Robbers.
Okay.
And he's like, what about that game? I go, that's a pretty easy game. I go, yeah, let's try that game.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah,
So,
you found a property, but you also nailed, like, I would even say something like Azul is very easy to play, and it's abstract, so there's not a ton of pieces, right? But it's really, I mean, I think knowing a very wide array of games is good. Because some people say, like, well, go to a game store, everybody's gaming. The game where that person's going to feel more comfortable, or even maybe combining games with another activity that has less social pressure. It's a technique that we sometimes call sandwiching in behavioral health, where we put a fun thing, then the unpleasant thing, then another fun thing on the outspec. So if it's something they're nervous about, well, let's eat together first, then play a game, then maybe watch a movie. So this way you're putting the quote unquote nervous activity in the middle of preferred activities. So that person may be like, oh, well, it's only for a little bit while we play the game, which is also why I'm like, please don't pull out Twilight Imperium 4. If this is the first, and it's purely, the complexity for one, but also the length. Because a lot of board games are designed to be played like pretty long. And people are like, well, we have a lot of people, so it's a 6-player game. That time on the side of the box doesn't always indicate length of time with more players, right? BGG is your friend. What's your sweet spot for player count? Because that's going to tell you how the game doesn't slog when you have too many players taking. I mean, a game like Creature Comforts, it's a great game. And once people learn that game, yeah, people can take their own turn doing the whole assigning the dice and doing what you want to do on the board. But if it's your first time with a bunch of new people, that game takes forever. Because now it's, well, now you do your move, now you do your move, now you do your move. If you have 6 players every round going through that like that. And I think that with a lot of people, that boredom that might set in can also be a deterrent. So I think not fast and flashy, but quick and brief, easy to get, but is complex enough to create cool moments. Like Candyland's an easy game to learn, but I don't think anyone has fun beyond the age of 5 playing that game, because there is no game. It's literally like the most luck of the draw, how the cards are shuffled. You could just turn the deck over and find out who wins. Like that's how Candyland works,
Exactly.
Yeah, so those are a couple of things that I would say as far as suggestion. I know I threw like 8 different solutions there.
But that's again looking for ways to get people into the hobby, and especially into my game night. That's my not so secret hidden agenda.
Now on the other hand, if a person is some people that I've worked with like conventions because of the anonymity of that environment. So again, it goes back to knowing the person, because for some people, losing in a convention that's far away from home, who gives a crap? You don't know any of these people. These are all strangers. No one's
going to rub it in.
Right. No one's going to remember anybody because you blend into the crowd. So there's no one size fits all to anything. But I mean, there are some globals that we can think of, but that's another one. No, yeah, but for some people, that anonymity may be very accessible. So it is, for some people, going to a con is comfortable, but bringing a friend along now makes losing more personal. So in that person's example, they may not want to lose with that friend, or going with a friend might make them feel more comfortable.
It's funny. It's like I met a friend down there, and he and I played Heat together. So, but I mean, it's part of my shyness, which people tell me they're surprised that I'm as shy as I am. But I will not go up to somebody, hey, let's play this game. I'm not going to do that.
Yep.
I do watch the Dice Tower a lot, and Tom Vasel, he always talks about his shows. Like, look, if you want to play a game, just come find me, and I'll find you some. I'll take all that pressure off you and find someone to play a game with you. And it's just, it's like the most awesome. I have so much respect for that man for being as human as he is and stuff like this.
Oh, yeah. I've when I at Origins and when we went to I went to my one and only Gen Con. I think it was 2018. And it was I mean I've been to many different large cons. Like I was at Awesome Con in DC a number of times. And that's like a 75,000 person show. So I mean I know about large crowds and large people and everything. But yeah, he made time to chat with me on the floor when I ran in, and I'm sure he gets it all the time. Like, oh my God, Tom, but yeah, I agree. He's very approachable guy. A great way to be engaging. And even like I would say checking in on the person, like not over checking, because I think that's a mistake a lot of people do also. Is I use a phrase sometimes, I call it being intrusively helpful,
Yeah,
which is,
I get it.
somebody has like anxiety or whatever, it's kind of like, like kid gloves. And it's like, no, in some ways that person, some people don't want that over treatment because it's stigmatizing. They're like, what, you think I can't handle it? Or, I can't do whatever. It's like just being open. I would say be non-judgmental. If someone's having any type of like troubling anxiety or whatever, try not to react emotionally, but react compassionately. Like, hey,
Right.
what can we do? Should we, definitely, I would say take a pause from the action and don't all six people around the table like, you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? Because during anxiety moments, like nothing's getting in there because your brain and you're protecting yourself from stimulus. So slow it down. It's okay. More than not, that person will know, especially if they're ready. Because we talk a lot we did a research study a number of years ago measuring the efficacy of RPG for adults with social anxiety. Now, the weirdness of it was we had planned to do the study in person, but we literally were planning and we were like, yeah, we're going to launch this study in like April of 2020. Well, middle of March had other plans for us. So we very quickly adapted. We pushed it back. We said, okay, we can do RPG online. So let's run this online. And we actually found that virtually like 75% of the people in the study were like, yeah, thank God this thing went online, because if you would have been doing this in person, good luck getting us there. And a lot of folks, even with social anxiety, need that one-to-one support to be able to then step down into a group because of the nature of social anxiety, which is another reason why I suggested two-player games as a good intro to folks. That even if you're at a game night, they could just play with one person, but they're still in the room with other people. Like there's a lot of strategies, and a lot of it really comes down to that person's comfort and kind of asking them what they would prefer. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Let's before my batteries start to die. What's your biggest success with tabletop therapy? If you get,
do you mean in terms of like a person that we connected with, or?
Yeah, pretty much like your biggest success story of like someone who really who was struggling and really took to the board game therapy.
Well, I would have to say that one of our biggest success stories was actually with an agency that we used to run with. So one of the things that we do with a lot of our programs is we will run events, whether it's a therapy group or whether it's like a meetup group or whatever, through local game stores. We partner a lot with our FLGSs because they're our churches, right? Or hopefully they should be. So we used to run a series of community board game events for an organization that sadly is no longer in existence. They were called the Tommy Foundation of Lancaster. And they were an organization that supported people, autistic folks. So whether it was like children, and they supported like the whole family experiencing autism. And what we did was we basically said, well, we can use board games to help with a lot of this, work and capacity building. but we didn't want to bill it necessarily as like social skills group for the autistic kids, because that, that's not right. So what we instead did was we just said, we're going to run a community board game event brought to you in partnership with the Bodhana Group, Tommy Foundation, and 6 Feet Under Games. So it wasn't just for the kids who had the autism, right? It was, nope, we're just going to game. And what we had was like, one kiddo came, and every week I felt a little bad at first, but we were trying to, like, even with his parents saying about natural kind of consequences, he came with his Uno attack every week. And he was like, no one wants to play Uno attack. No one wants to play Uno attack. And I said, well, how did you get people to play or not play? And he goes, well, I set it up and nobody comes to my table. And I go, well, have you asked anybody? Well, no, it's a fun game. People should want to play this, right?
I have friends like this.
Right. So what we kind of did was we then used that opportunity, and it wasn't like we're going to give an autism lesson. No, it was, here are ways to get people to play the game with you. And it then led to him like partnering with people, and people were like, well, that game kind of sounds like a silly game or a baby game. And he was like, well, what do I do now? And it was really weird. It was like a Cyrano de Bergerac thing, right? Where he would like come and go, well, this happened, and what should I do now? And we're like, well, what do you think you should do? And eventually it came that his mom was like, how did you get him to try a new game? And he said, it was a negotiation. He would try High Noon Saloon, but everybody that played High Noon Saloon would play Uno Attack after he tried the new game. And then we saw over time, he was like, that game was actually pretty fun. I go, it's pretty different, huh? And he's like, yeah. So then eventually he left Uno Attack at home. And he would come and he'd go, what can I try that I haven't tried? So then we said, well, why don't we take this a little bit higher? I was like, but you always play with those guys. You're never going to beat everybody if you play with the same people. So try to find some new people to play a game that you know with, but use it a game they don't know. So we're building these layers of capacity for social engagement, but we're not calling it out like that. Another great one was, but one of my favorite stories is a parent came to one of our events, and we were trying to play, I can't remember what game it was. I think it was like Wasabi Cats or Cat Wasabi, I think the title was. It was one of those totem games, little card games. And so we're playing this, and we read through the rules, and how many times have you read through rules and you get them wrong and you have to reset and try again? So we're reading through, and I did like an uh-oh SpaghettiOs kind of moment, and I was like, I think I read the rules wrong. And the mom looks at me with this terror look on her face, like, oh my God, my daughter's going to freak out because she wanted to play this game, and now we're going to have to stop and reset the game. And it amazed her that, she's like, well, what do you mean we have to start over? I said, well, honey, I'm sorry, I read the rules wrong, and that happens sometimes. There's a lot of pages in here, and there's a lot of people playing. I was like, so I'm sorry, but look, nobody lost, but nobody won. And now you've had some practice. So the next time we play, you're going to be even better at this. And she's like, okay, I bet I can win. And mom looked at, I joke about this, but mom looked at me like I was some kind of freaking wizard. Like I had this magic, and I was like, it's not my magic. It's the magic of a game. Because now there were no real stakes on the line. All right, just shuffle the cards, reset. No big whoop, right? I like those little moments, those snapshots, if you will, because they're part of this big album where, people are like, well, I don't know what game to play. I was like, well, I'm not picking because I picked last time. So I understand. Do you want someone to go with you into the room where there's 800 titles in the library? Right? To go pick. So I love moments like that where I see these little bursts of like, oh, wait a minute. And that the game allows for that transference. And we didn't have to do any skill transference conversation. There was nothing pro in that conversation except explaining it to mom afterwards what we're doing. Like, yes, when we come, we want them to pick a new game every time. Why? Because it breaks routine. That's something you want your child to work on. But we're going to do it in a very, very covert way. So I would say, yeah, as far as moments, those are two of my favorites just from one group engagement that we did. And we
That's awesome.
Yeah, we ran that for like 2.5 years. Every month we had a community meetup, and we had, folks, nobody knew who everybody's diagnosis was or any of that. It wasn't important. We were just
Right.
saying, well, we ran this event, and they were like, this place is pretty cool. It's like, yeah, and guess what? You can come back any day of the week that they're open, and I don't have to be here. So now maybe they go in on a Saturday with other friends from school, or maybe they go in and meet a friend who's in the game store, right? One of those
Right.
community people that we played with. So now they're developing natural social supports, which is how we all got the benefit of games. All those lifelong friends that we had that started at a table with a flip of a card or a roll of the die. That's how the magic happens.
Okay. Those are, it was a small story, but it's an amazing story. Very cool. All right, let's go. I think I've covered a lot of them. Now into the final batch of questions. There's not too many here.
Is this like your James Pivot questions? Your was it inside the actor studio? It's like,
Yeah, that's me. We need a plan. We need two ferns.
It's like, what board game would you like God to play with you? Like, that would be your.
Okay, you just ruined my question. Kidding. Okay. Where do you see this methodology going in the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Excellent question. One, I think that we do need a lot of research to validate what it is that we're doing. I've seen a lot of great things. Most of it is anecdotal. So a lot of it is what we would call qualitative research. People feel good, people demonstrate, they come more often to something. Okay, that's measurable. But I think one of our standpoints at Bodhana is that a lot of people will say, well, we need research on board game therapy and RPG therapy. And I go, no, what we need is research to validate that if we're using this as a delivery system, it's as effective as traditional group therapy or traditional talk therapy or other modalities. Like if we're using play therapy, let's compare the results and what we use to measure play therapy to measure the use of, say, RPG as a skill build, or let's measure, let's select a certain number of games for a certain subject area. Then let's do measurement of grades and aptitude at at the beginning of the year or whatever. And then after a series of when you go to play games in the resource room, you're playing all the fluxes, right? You're playing math flux, history flux, nature flux, whatever. Then are we seeing a change in people as a result of this? I think that a lot of people really get caught up in the coolness aspect of it, of like, hey, look at me, man. I run RPGs as a therapist. Aren't I cool? And I go, yeah, you are, but you're a therapist first in this model. So we have to be responsible that when we're measuring this, it's not just the coolness factor, but we need to treat it as much as a serious domain as possible. That's why, when we did our study, we were one of the first studies, if not the first, to actually use quantitative measures. So we were measuring social anxiety. So we used the typical screeners, the SPIN 17, which is social phobia index. We use the GAD-7, the generalized anxiety disorder scale. We use the GRSS, group relatability satisfaction survey. Like, we use the social skills inventory. We use things that measure what we're trying to change. Don't measure the game, measure the therapy that you're using the game to deliver. That I think is where we need to go in the next 10 to 15.
Okay.
I would love, much like, I can't remember what president it was. It says, I'd love a board game in every classroom. Yes, that's right. I seriously, we had, during that gaming group I was telling you about that we ran at the store, I had a mom that came and she said, my kids were kind of rammy when I dropped them off for the game event. And I was like, well, thanks. But she said, how were they? And I said, oh, they were great. She goes, well, what did they do? I go, they played the Choose Your Own Adventure House of Danger game. And she goes, well, what's that? I go, well, let them tell you. And they were like, oh, Mom, this is so cool. We were going on this adventure, blah, 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 blah. And I showed her the game. And she's like, they were reading I go, yeah. She goes, my kids were reading for 2 hours. I go, well, they were reading and going on an adventure and rolling the die, and they were a psychic investigator. So yeah, they were reading, but they didn't know that they were reading. They were having fun. And that's part of the point, but even that game, that could be a reading comprehension game that you could put in a classroom, and it's a lot more attractive than just standard reading.
Right.
But we have to look at it seriously to make sure that it's not winging a prayer that, well, we hope they get better. Well, we need to know that people are getting better, and we need to kind of know also what about the game works. Because is it leaving kids to their own devices? I don't think that always works. Is it playing with them and guiding the experience? Is it the setup of what games we choose or how often they play? Or is there a progressive scale to like going from Splendor to Azul? I just pulled those out of a hat, but not wearing a hat. But that's kind of what I think, James.
Oh, cool. Is the have the the quantitative reports been publicly available? Have they been published?
They have been published. They are behind a journal paywall. We were published in November, I believe it was November 22nd of last year. We were published in the Journal of Social Work with Groups. Now, again, that's specifically an RPG study. We have been talking with some of our university partners about possible board game research about some of the benefits of board games.
Right.
But yeah, it basically showed that, like I said, we ran this in the middle of the pandemic. We were also running this study in the middle of everything with George Floyd, Black Lives Matters. We're also with, a lot of the, at least I should say, the initial wave of anti-transgender and LGBTQIA sentiment and the political upheaval right before the election. So even in the midst of all of that societal whatever that was going on, we saw a general reduction in symptomology, like self-reported, of course, but we also saw some of the folks from in our groups, they were making connections and sharing their insights from the game with their therapists and making headway in their individual sessions. And we also saw that, some of these folks still game together because they met in a research that they played a 3-month Kids on Bikes game. And they're
Right.
still talking with each other and supporting each other, and because they went through an experience together. And again, that's the power of gaming too. That's the magic of, whether it's hanging out at a game store and, yeah, so and so told me this game. Oh yeah, I know that guy. Blah blah blah. Now we're kibitzing again. So yeah, it was very good. It wasn't earth shattering because a role playing game group is like 6 people max if you're on a good GM day at my age. But so we ran like 5 groups. That's only 30 people, maybe 36 because we ran 2 heats of 1 at any rate. So yeah, that's not a lot of numbers, but that's one of the limitations of research of this kind of thing. Like we can't replicate necessarily because game RPGs, they're individualized. It's designed
Right.
for the person and what their struggle is. So I can't run the same module for everybody. That's not the way this model works, at least from the Bodhana perspective.
Is there anything you want to tell? Is there anything you want to tell the Board Game Sherpa viewers that I didn't go through that we didn't talk already about?
Oh my gosh! Outside of like plugs and projects and how to support us,
That's the next question.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think we've covered a lot. I mean, in general, I would say one of the things I said before: don't overthink the inclusion of someone. Just talk to people. And get to know people, their likes or dislikes, their preferences, and just be open, warm, and people always talk about the golden rule, right? Everybody remembers the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. No, I believe in the platinum rule, which is do unto others as they would like done to them. Because if it's do unto others as you would have them do to you, no, that's my preference.
Right.
What's their preference? Don't be afraid to have that dialogue, and just realize that some people may not love it as much initially the way that you love it. So just try to be gentle, try to be considerate, I hesitate to bring up Will Wheaton's law. Just don't be that person. It's in your face, in your face. I wouldn't come back to your table, and I'm.
Well, in my Dungeons and Dragons group, we have one rule: I can't bring my Mr. T miniature.
That I object to that.
And I fight it every time. Okay, now the final question.
Final.
How can people get in touch with you? How can people find out more about your wonderful organization? How can people get involved? How can people donate games? Everything. Whatever you got.
Awesome. So the main way is to just go and check out our website, which is www.thebodhanagroup.org. You can also, if you're interested, we run a convention, like I had mentioned, called Save Against Fear. This year it's in its 13th iteration. It's 3 to 4 days. Technically, the one extra day is not for regular gamers. Those are for teachers and therapists who come for trainings and panels that we run. But it's, nice family-friendly gaming experience. We bring our library out.
That's in York?
That is in York, Pennsylvania. It will be at the York Expo Center this year, the weekend of November 9th through the 12th. So you can look up saveagainstfear.com, which is another easy way to find us, so you can kind of cross-site. You can find us on Facebook, the Bodhana Group. You can also follow us on Twitter at the Bodhana Group. You can follow me on Twitter at Bodhana Jack. In terms of support, if you want to donate any copies of any titles to us, please let us know where you are, what you want to donate. If you have games, we will travel. We have driven 3-4 hours to pick up game libraries. We do not mind at all. And again, we are a 501c3, so game donations are always helpful. And that RPG board, like I said, we'll find a use for it unless you tell us what you want us to use it for. Also, of course, any kind of financial support is always very helpful. People don't like to hear it, but that's the reality. The best way to support any nonprofit is through financial donation, because that keeps the lights on. It keeps people getting paid so we can do the work that we do. And another way of looking at it, we have one kid who has never paid for a group in the time that he's been with us because, his family is financial need. So we use donations sometimes to cut the cost of services for folks that can't afford it. And aside from that, you'll find all the donation stuff on our website. We are also hoping this year Save to launch the Kickstarter for our upcoming role-playing game, which is a game called Branch Riders. It is already been picked up to be published by Onyx Path Publishing, fine makers of Cavaliers of Mars, Pugmire, tons of great product, plus the They Came From series. I think that's kind of most of it. But above all, help spread the word about what we do. If you're interested.
One thing you forgot.
What I forget?
It's how I got in touch with you in the first place. When I was at PAX, I saw the therapy, and I was like, oh, my friend's a therapist. She would love this. So I got her all the paperwork. I got her my flash duck. But I actually gave her the flash duck. Shh. But yeah. How would therapists or anybody get trained to do what you guys do?
Also, go ahead.
And one more. And what if they're not in the York, Pennsylvania area?
Excellent questions. Thank you. I was gonna so we offer online as well as in-person training opportunities. All of the information about what we offer for trainings can be found on our website. There is a tab for training and consultation. Also, if folks are looking for these services, we do a combination of in-person groups as well as online groups. We actually just started a 14-week training course in therapeutic RPG. That just started last Wednesday, and we're going to be running those in multiple heats. We also offer Saturday weekend trainings in the Bodhana model. As far as the board game, that's an in-person one, so that we would have to travel to where you're at. But in terms of group, we run online groups, we run in-person groups in York. We actually, on the 13th of this month, we will be starting an adult role-playing group. So any persons, above the age of 18, and we want to make it kind of varied, so we have a lot of experience in there. Those groups are running on Mondays from 7:30 to 9:30 EST. Seats are still available. We're also going to be starting a new children's group in York on Tuesdays. We have groups, and all of that information also can be found on our website to how you can get to us. The trainings on average for the whole series is $700. If you're an LPC or an ATA therapist, we can give you continuing education hours. Bodhana is an approved continuing education provider through the National Board for Certified Counselors. But our training is designed to, no matter what your use, we could teach you how to apply role-playing to that use. And of course, our board game, our goal is to be the in-house tabletop therapeutic and educational support company of at least Pennsylvania, if not the surrounding area. And again, we've spoken at many conferences and conventions, including PAX Unplugged, Gen Con, as well as a lot of, state conferences, for providers and such. So yeah, I think I covered most of that there. So all of that on our website. And if you have any questions, just email us and say, hey, I don't know where to start. We'll contact you and get in touch with you to help answer the questions you need. We're very accessible.
So that's been our interview with Jack B from the Bodhana Group. If you found this stuff interesting, subscribe if you want. And also, please give some thumbs up. And if you have any questions, comments, put them in the comments below. I'll get them. I'll send them to him. He'll read them. Whatever. You'll get your questions answered. And thanks for watching. And see you next episode.